On April 8, 1999, Mascoma Savings Bank celebrated its 100th anniversary. A day-long celebration took place, culminating with over 120 employees, board members, and corporation members gathering at the annual meeting. But even as the celebration was taking place, the next chapter in Mascoma's history was already unfolding.
It certainly wasn't anything that we needed to do. But when we looked at it and we looked at the cost of it and we looked at what we were going to obtain, it didn't make sense not to do it.
In the banking upheavals of the previous 20 years, New London Trust in New London, New Hampshire had come to be owned by the Sun Life Assurance of Canada. In 1998, Sun Life decided they no longer wanted New London Trust as one of their assets. Mascoma was approached and agreed to be one of 4 parties to buy the New London Trust Company. After several months of discussions with Sun Life, it came down to a late-night conference call and one remaining point for negotiation.
And we said, there's no way that we can reconcile ourselves to your way of thinking, and therefore we can't negotiate that point for you. And this is about 10:30 at night now, and the phone just went dead. They hung up on us. And
literally just hung up the phone.
Just no goodbye, no good night, no wish you well, just click.
Phone calls to Sun Life the next day confirmed that the sale was off. Sun Life was shopping for another buyer. They found one in another bank, but several months later, Sun Life came calling again.
And they said, are you folks still interested in New London Trust Company? And the response was, yes, we are. Well, we'd be interested in talking to you. Well, why would that be? Well, things have fallen through with the new buyer.
Discussions began again. This time, however, there were no rude endings to phone calls, and in late spring 1999, Mascoma Savings Bank acquired 2 branch locations of the former New London Trust Company, one in Hanover, the other in New London.
When we heard that it was going to be a local bank like Mascoma, there was a great sigh of relief, because what we knew about Mascoma and had heard, and the fact that it was a local community bank the same way New London Trust was, that we felt that that was going to be a much better fit.
Along with the locations came over 40 new employees. There was also the task of dividing up thousands of customers and their accounts between the 4 purchasing partners.
And also the balance sheet itself of New London Trust had to be split amongst all the parties. And my role was, along with the other chief financial officers of the other organizations, was to take their balance sheet, all of their assets and all of their liabilities, and to divide them all up amongst all the 4 parties.
When we brought New London Trust into the fold, as well as the people, we started realizing that we had a lot of people in a lot of different locations that really would be more effective or efficient if they were all in the same location.
As Mascoma grew, so did the backroom operations of the bank, from loan processing to check processing. Temporary facilities had been created on Airport Road in West Lebanon. Other operations were taking place in the basement of the main office in Lebanon. With the acquisition of New London Trust, the situation became even more difficult.
They were literally elbow to elbow down there. They had no room. They're probably a 36-inch work surface, and 6 people elbow to elbow most of the day. The supervisor was sitting behind the shelving for the courier, the courier bins. It was really difficult. The Fedline staff was sitting down there, the tech staff was sitting down there, and no place to do things like work on file servers, stage PCs. We had piles of stuff all over.
It wasn't just we're cramped and we're stretched. It was all of the energy that it took every day to just keep on top of the day-to-day items. And the fact that so much of what we did was really a fragmented approach to any type of processing that we did. Our job function in one area relied so heavily on someone else who may have been 30 miles away. And their job function relied on someone else who may have been 30 miles in the other direction. And so trying to keep that running and keep it smooth and keep it transparent to the customer was incredibly exhausting.
After a difficult search, a site was finally found for the operations center in the town of Hartford, Vermont. Ground was broken in the fall of 2002. The site was already familiar to Mascoma as it was adjacent to the bank's Sykes Avenue branch, which would be incorporated into the new facility. During the interim, the Sykes Avenue staff had a front row seat for the construction.
And it would actually shake. It would literally shake the whole building, and it'd vibrate the whole building. So our desks, everything would move, and our computers would sometimes go out because it would shake them so much that we'd lose connections.
Other Mascoma employees, not quite so close to the construction, were always welcome to visit the work site, and the input of any employee who would be working at the facility was sought during regular planning meetings.
It wasn't that we're going to build this building and this is where you go and you've had no say and be happy. It was right from the beginning, we need everyone's input in this process. We need to make sure that if we build something, we put all this time and energy into this, that it's going to meet everyone's needs.
Oldies 104, the greatest hits of all time at Mascoma Savings Bank. We're at the Sykes Mountain Avenue location for their big grand opening. And we have lots of goodies to give away today.
On October 13, 2003, the Operations Center was officially opened with hundreds of Mascoma customers and guests, including Vermont Governor Jim Douglas. The celebration also included a cookout for all who came.
People, when they first moved over there, especially the folks that came from the basement, were just astounded that they had windows they could look out of. I mean, that for them was just, I think, top notch. That they had their own space and they had windows. They could see daylight, they could see the weather.
It wasn't only new branches and buildings that Mascoma was adding. New services were being offered as well. The bank started Mascoma Investment Service to give customers a wider choice in financial services. Online banking services matured as the technology and customer demand for internet banking grew. And for those who wanted a more personal experience from their local bank, Mascoma began the Platinum Passport Club, which organized social events and travel trips for its members, beginning with a trip to Kennebunk, Maine in 1999.
We took 15 customers on that particular trip, and then at the Alaska trip, we took 27. And then we repeated Alaska again this year. So we went 4 years later and we took 60 customers to Alaska this time.
This has given the opportunity for a lot of people to go to destinations that they never would have gone to before in their lives. They never would have gone by themselves. And now they go, they're safe, everything is taken care of for them, they feel secure, and they have seen things that they never dreamt that they'd be able to see. And just that alone, to me, speaks a lot about what this bank is about and what we can offer to the community, and it's one thing I don't think people think a lot about.
While Mascoma is taking some customers around the world, it also maintains its commitments to the Upper Valley. In 2001, contributions made by the Mascoma Savings Bank Foundation surpassed the $1 million mark. The bank also took a leadership role in formation of the Upper Valley Housing Coalition.
I think ultimately the issue we all have to ask ourselves is, do we want our communities to be inclusionary or exclusionary? I think what's in fact happening because of this rise in real estate values is that the lower income brackets are being pushed out of our core towns, and we're going to end up with very exclusive communities, and I think that violates the spirit of community, and I think it violates the spirit of New England in so many ways.
There was also a continual assessment of current facilities, leading to the decision in 2000 to close the Gate Street office in White River. It was Mascoma's first, and to date only, branch closure.
it was difficult to say goodbye to the building because that building had always been a bank, and it had been there for over 100 years. As a bank. And it was difficult to say goodbye to that. It would never be a bank again.
New branch offices, however, would be the news for the first years of the new century. In Hanover, on the same day of the New London Trust acquisition, a new branch was also opened on Lime Road, bringing to 3 the number of Hanover banking locations. In Vermont, a drive-up branch was opened in Bethel to complement the bank's existing facility in downtown.
When we had the architect design that for us, we wanted to make sure that, to the extent that we could, we drew some references to the existing bank in town. So when you look at it, it looks like a miniature replica of the building up the street in terms of the brick facade and the granite outline on the top and so forth. You know, as we have added the Green Mountain branches and the New London Trust branches, we began to geographically better define what our marketplace was.
When you simply look at a map of the Upper Valley and you look at a map of Mascoma Savings Bank's franchise, it is the one community that is noticeably absent.
The 4 institutions in Woodstock over the last 5 or 6 years all were merged into other institutions. They changed their names in some instances more than once. So here was a great opportunity for a bank like Mascoma with over 100 years of history as Mascoma Savings Bank, which was locally controlled, made local decisions, a golden opportunity to be in Woodstock.
A site for the Woodstock branch was found on Route 4 going into town. It would need a lot of work, but it seemed that it would be a suitable location.
The building that we're in now, the store that we're in now, was actually a printer, and it needed some major repairs. The floor was there actually. Prior to it being a print shop, it was actually a Volkswagen dealership, and when we opened the floor, there were still lifts for the car dealership in the floor. We had our grand open house. We had a barbecue outside, and if you're familiar with Woodstock in October, that's peak foliage, and a lot of the tour buses come through Woodstock, and that first barbecue, although we provided food for a lot of our customers and potential customers, there were also buses going through with people from Texas that stopped by for a hamburger and a soda.
You know, there are things that you do in business that are almost intuitive. And Windsor, to the management of the bank, seemed like it was a natural thing for us to do.
In the mid-'80s, Windsor lost over 1,000 jobs within a 2-year period in a town that has only 4,000 people. So it really got the stuffing knocked out of it.
In the center of Windsor, right downtown, there was quite an eyesore. There was the old Avishon building and then another building right next to it that they were just decaying and falling down.
But what we saw was a community that was on the rebound.
When they decided to come into the community, the downtown is really an ideal location. Mascoma went in and purchased both those properties and started a massive revitalization.
It's different that it's a bank as opposed to a clothing store or something. All of those things would be wonderful. But a bank is saying more. A bank is saying you're a good investment in a way that no other kind of business says it.
And I'll tell you, that ended up being the catalyst for our downtown revitalization. Other owners of property right next to us and throughout the town started fixing up their buildings.
All of a sudden, buildings began changing hands and getting improved, and the values of the real estate increased. and the quality of the retailers in the first floor spaces increased. And now that's going on to the side streets.
People now look to Windsor as a place, you know, to come and open a business.
We've been around since 1899 and will probably be around in 2099. So there's a certain stable relationship that customers can build. There's a continuity between our past and our future.
The whole process just reaffirmed our feelings about Mascoma Bank, that they are a locally owned and operated bank, and that they really are committed to the people in the area.
Mascoma truly represents a community-based bank that has that considers itself a community bank and acts like one.